Here I am, back again with more disturbing analog horror entities, and this time, it's ones I think you wouldn't survive against. Hey, I can see you getting ready to type up your "nah, I'd win" comment already, but hear me out. We're going to take a look at 5 analog horror entities from 5 different individuals and series. I'll explain what they are and I'll tell you why and how you wouldn't survive against them. To then wrap the video up, I'll rank them from least to most powerful. I'll also have the links of what we talk about in the description if you want to check them out too. These entities are ruthless, you are not surviving them. Also, what do you think of the visuals for these new analog horror videos? I was thinking of keeping them simple like the previous ones in this series. And with that being said, like, subscribe, and hit that hype button if you enjoy the video. Does the hype button even work? I don't know, maybe you should test it out. Anyway, let's dive into the disturbing analog horror entities you definitely wouldn't survive against. First up, we have Godzilla BloodBath by Apricotal Animations. I've wanted to talk about this Goji for a while now because I think the concept and design for it is just so cool. Apricotal has done a fantastic job here. Basically, we're given a version of Godzilla that looks to be or have evolved from a Basilosaurus, a large predatory prehistoric whale whose name means King Lizard. That's a very fitting name. As animals evolved, so did humans, and we began to hunt whales, until we hunted the wrong one, BloodBath, which I'll be referring to this Goji by since, well, it's in the name of the series and for convenience sake. As we see, BloodBath is quite malnourished looking and sickly. His atomic breath has the ability to infect humans and turn them into monsters with sickly and mutated appearances. I guess that's the effect of the breath's radiation. In some rare cases, other kaijus are created in this process. So that's an explanation in this universe on how other kaijus are created. It also looks like BloodBath is an undead whale that's been risen, possibly thanks to some sort of radiation, and he looks to seek the destruction of humanity. The spikes on his back are sharp and jagged and reminded me of harpoons or sharp weapons, and we can see that he's able to regenerate too and maybe even reattach his limbs. He pukes up his guts at some point too, so I guess he doesn't need them if he's undead. That would make sense to me, and the footage of it is some pretty good body horror. His design is great and so is his power. Look at how he decimated the city and these tanks. If the military can't stop it, what makes you think that you could? One hit from his atomic breath and you're finished. A fate worse than death may be in store for you too if you get turned into a mutant, undead monstrosity. I mean, I guess that would explain why there's another one of him? Or it's just another spirit of a dead whale, something like that. And don't think that being undead is a loophole to being able to survive either. It makes me wonder if the oxygen destroyer that can beat Godzilla can be used here to wipe out BloodBath. I mean, probably not, right? The weapon destroys oxygen molecules in a radius to suffocate and kill living things, emphasis on living, so I don't think it can be used on BloodBath since he's undead. Engulfing it in flame may be the best solution here to maybe stop him from regenerating, but we don't know how that all works and if a military would even be able to do that. I wonder if enough military firepower in general will be able to take him out. He wouldn't be as resistant as Godzilla, but being undead comes with those regenerative perks on par with or better than Godzilla's, probably. So he could theoretically take a lot of firepower and just keep going. Either way, I can't wait to see more from this series, and if you were caught in BloodBath's BloodBath, you wouldn't survive. Now, I want to pivot to the N.A.S. files by CLOWNZ, which may sound familiar to you if you've watched my The Incredibles Disturbing Analog Horror video. I wanted to bring this series up because of the analog horror-y entity within it, Mr. Destruction, who you wouldn't survive against. This series is inspired by the darker tones and events from the Incredibles 1 movie, which is about heroes who are called supers in this universe, who are forced to live mundane lives. Circumstances change, and Mr. Incredible has to rely on his heroic strengths and his family to save the day. In this analog horror, Mr. Destruction is the name given to Mr. Incredible. You see, the backlash that supers received for their actions really got to Mr. Incredible and he self-slaughtered himself. There's a little more that happens between Syndrome, the Supers, etc., but our focus is on Mr. Destruction, who slowly takes out his family and becomes an unstoppable undead threat. It seems that he's able to keep his strengths from when he was living. How he's been able to rise from the afterlife is unknown too, but let's look at his powers. He has superhuman strength, speed, agility, senses, endurance, and is basically near invulnerable. So I think that near invulnerability part may be the reason why he's undead now, or survived. I know I labeled him as undead, but it's just an educated guess. So surviving an attack from Mr. Destruction would be impossible. We wouldn't be able to run, you wouldn't be able to hurt him either, and I'd be surprised if ballistics would be able to hurt him. The first thing I thought of that could take him out was radiation, since what living creature can survive being exposed to that for too long? But if he is undead, then I don't know how much that would affect him. I mentioned before that you wouldn't be able to outrun him, and that's because of his super strength and speed. That means that you probably wouldn't be able to hurt him either. He seems to be on the more sadistic side too, since not only did he slay his family, but he looks to have ripped the face off of his wife, so a torturous fate would await you too. Lucky for you, an alarm will blare when he's out and about, but if you can hear the alarm, chances are that Mr. Destruction is very close to you, and you wouldn't survive that encounter. From here, I want to make an apology. I have made a serious and continuous lapse in my judgment, and I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm simply here to apologize. I mentioned 6-7 in my previous Why It Would Suck to Be Born As video. Let me explain, please. I was merely critiquing the storytelling in those videos, and I mentioned that I wrote stuff like that when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And that's when I summoned the wrath of the 6-7 kid, and I had no idea what I had unleashed in my comment section. Looking into what 6-7 is, I was met with one of the most unfunny memes and jokes I have ever seen in my entire life. All it did was reinforce my distaste for so many new memes and modern social media lingo. It made me yearn for days gone by, and I've even heard from teachers that school kids muttering 6-7 makes them burst out laughing. I can only imagine that it would be in a crazed manner. I get that as kids we all share and say dumb shit with each other, but this is straight cheeks, man. And that brings us to the apex of this 6-7 monstrosity. 6-7 Kid analog horror made by Dead Air VHS, an AI analog horror channel. Oh, say it ain't so. We have two videos to look at, 6-7 Kid analog horror and SCP-067 Kid analog horror cosmic horror. Okay. Alright, so this incident began in a high school gymnasium where we see kids playing basketball and then something ungodly is spoken by an unblinking child. Just watch and see for yourself.
Unblinking, staring into the lens. He opened his mouth and screamed one word. 6, 7. Nobody understood. Nobody reacted. Yet everyone heard it.
This moment shook the world and nothing's been the same. The poor child that muttered 6-7 has never been seen since. That brings us to the SCP video. With the child missing, life moved on, did it not? Just as everyone had forgotten the incident that stirred the world, they were reminded in a moment that ended humanity. The 6-7 Kid devours the Earth in a cosmic horror level extinction event, and that was that. I'm sorry to say, but you definitely would not survive this. I don't even need to explain why, you can just see it. And say for example you were on the moon when this happened, well, technically you survived the extinction event, but you're now stuck on the moon with no home to go back to. Nothing is your friend in outer space, and you'll live on whatever food and water you have left until it all runs out and your body withers away. Or he could notice you and end your life prematurely. What am I even talking about? So anyway, for the next entity, I'll let a homie, BD Studios, take it from here. So give a big and warm welcome to him.
For this next entity, let's pivot to some true cold-blooded killers, with the first apex predators from the Emergences series by AZUNStudios. I really enjoy this creator's series, with him giving us some great entities we can look at and talk about. So let's start off with the first apex predators video. If you don't know what happens in this series, the thought to be extinct species are emerging from holes from the earth, hence the name Prehistoric Emergence. Stuff like the Kraken or Krakens, among other species shown in the video. To make my points here, you should know that when an invasive species is introduced to a food chain, which is what the video describes, it mainly results in the ecosystem being interrupted or changing for the worse. For example, if a predator is introduced, that means that anything below it that eats it will probably see a huge cut in population. That'll send a ripple effect through the whole food chain for anything that eats it or it eats, and it will ripple on and on. And that's what we'd be facing with the arrival of these prehistoric animals, whether land or sea-based. And with most of these animals in these videos being absolutely massive, these are changes to the ecosystem, meaning that there's a new big dog in town, one that needs a truckload of food to survive. For example, the Megalodon. He eats around 2,500 pounds of food per day, just for one animal. So every day, food becomes more and more scarce in that ecosystem. And with that, the country's economies in that region would take a hit. And you know the governments of the world would not let this slide. And they would definitely do everything in their power to make sure that their dividends don't take a hit. But looking at an example like the Kraken, if it was just you and the Kraken in the ocean, it's a no-brainer that you would not survive. The giant cephalopod is a mythical creature. Something similar to it is the Camarasaurus, this giant cephalopod that existed millions and millions of years ago. This might be that cephalopod or just straight up a kraken. Either way, these things were meters in length, and obviously in a 1v1 engagement with it, you would not win. The size difference and fighting in the ocean, its prime habitat, it's more than enough for a reason. But then I started to think on a wider scale. Aside from the interruption of the food chain, global food and water production, as we see in the video, there are more than just one quote-unquote krakens, and there would be multiples of everything. It would make no sense for just one creature from a species to make its way to the surface. How else would it have survived down there for millions of years? So I would not be surprised if there was more devise, a hyper-intelligent dinosaur of sorts, that emerge. And if you think about it, humans have been able to prosper at the top of the food chain for so long because a lot of these very big and deadly creatures above us aren't in the chain. Introducing these creatures into our lives would drastically change everything, even if it was just a few. But would things really be fine if it was tens, hundreds, even thousands? There's no chance of survival in the long term. It would be equivalent to an alien invasion, and that really wouldn't end well, would it? You can hide and rely on others to make you safe, but how realistically will that last? When will the emergence end? How can we even stop the emergence? How many entities will we keep at bay before it becomes hopeless? And how do we minimize damages to infrastructure or society in general? It's hard to say, and as the emergence gets worse, we'll eventually be majorly overtaken as the apex predators of the world. And eventually it will crumble. So you really had to ask, as more and more emerge, will we really have the technology and firepower to survive at the top of the food chain for long?
For the rest of the video, I, Sunflower, will be jumping back in. Hey, don't be so disappointed, okay? BD Studios will be back for another video, and a big thanks to him for joining me. I'll have his channel linked in the description for you to check out too. He makes pretty similar videos to me, so I know you'll like him. Now, for the final entity, I want to bring up one I talked about in my last video, the SIV-24 virus outbreak by Rogue Signal. Why? Because even though I said that you could definitely beat it, I think that it would be more likely that you definitely wouldn't survive against it. Well, that's a massive contradiction, and I've never done this 180 flip for a video, but I did write up that part of the last video with this sort of in mind. It doesn't invalidate what I've already said, but rather gives another possible perspective on it. So if you haven't watched my previous video or need a quick refresher, this outbreak is a zombie-like virus that has spread like wildfire across the US and the world through contact with the infected. How it started is unknown, but there's also hints throughout the video that the infected have some sort of intelligence to remember where you hide, among other things, and that things are pretty much doomed. I said that if you live in isolation, have enough resources, and give enough time, you can survive. I mean, yeah, I guess, but what are the chances of that happening? That's why I wanted to present the opposite and say you're doomed. It doesn't really matter what part of the world you live in either. If you go outside for whatever reason, like for food, water, medicine, supplies, etc., not only do you risk being attacked by the infected, you risk being attacked by the military, peacekeepers, and any marauders, etc. Being able to move freely without some sort of resistance would be slim. As the infected grow in numbers, nukes are being prepared to attempt to wipe them out and start anew. God has left us, and he cannot hear our prayers anymore. If that doesn't spell doom, then I don't know what does. What are the chances that you would be able to hunker down in a bunker for an unknown amount of years once the nukes go off? What are the chances that you'll have enough food, water, oxygen, sanitary disposal, supplies, etc.? You'd be able to eventually beat the virus outbreak given that enough time has passed, but like I said, what are the chances? I would say that you'd have more of a chance of being slain in the chaos of an extinction level event like this would bring than not. It doesn't matter how, since there's tons of ways it can happen. The previously mentioned military and peacekeepers, for example, they were deployed to shoot anything that moves, but then eventually let people who identified themselves as human by waving their country's flag and not making any crazy movements flee their homes. And this was, what, 1 to 2 months into the outbreak? You'd be lucky or in a position of power to even make it to that stage with how things have progressed. Every night would make for a stressful night, and you don't know when the infected would try to break into your home. And even in a position of power, when does the mutiny happen? When do people below you start to rise up? There doesn't seem to be any law and order anymore, so the chances of that should increase with each day, right? Unless, of course, you quell those below you. Eventually, you'll have much more of a chance of becoming a statistic with how the number of infected continues to rise. And then we have those nukes too. Here's a very helpful and generous comment on the topic by Crew128. He claims to be a specialist on the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear variety, and he teaches it. Look, I know people lie on the internet, but I don't have a reason to not believe him here. Anyway, Crew here has given us some facts about how we would go about walking on the surface after a nuclear bomb is dropped, where and how you could be killed at different steps of the bomb dropping and post-drop, how to keep safe from radiation and decontamination processes to ensure that you survive. But would you be prepared enough or in the right locations to even have all, if not some of the equipment and knowledge to stay safe and healthy? And then what? I guess you rebuild. So you could definitely beat the SIV-24 virus outbreak, but I think there's more of a chance that you would definitely not survive it. Alright, so that brings us to the section of the video where we rank things on a scale from least to most powerful. Interestingly, everything we looked at in this video has the ability to take over the world and push humanity out of the picture since everything is so strong and powerful. Even in saying that, there will be something that is least powerful, and that is the SIV-24 virus outbreak, which ironically was the most powerful in the first video it was covered in. Funny how that works. But I don't make the rules. Wait, yes I do. Anyway, this virus spreads quick and easy through contact with the infected, which is its biggest strength. Other than that, the infected seem to just be your average shambling zombie. They're dangerous, but not as dangerous as the rest of what we've talked about. From here, we have Prehistoric Emergence. Their biggest strength here would be the number of creatures pouring out of the emergence. The more, the stronger. Even then, the apex predators of the bunch would be able to do more than enough harm to all of us if given the chance. Next up is an undead entity, and I was tossing up between putting Mr. Destruction here or BloodBath, and I've picked Mr. Destruction. The big reason for this is his incredible amount of strength, endurance, and superpower capability. He may very well be unstoppable, but he lacks the killer instinct that BloodBath has and shows. Sure, he has some, but he's not going on an insane killing rampage like BloodBath. I guess a want to eradicate the human population will take you further in terms of your destructive power and strengths, and I guess having atomic breath definitely helps too. And finally, that makes the 6'7" kid the most powerful analog horror entity in this video. Well, what did you expect? He caused absolute psychological confusion back on Earth and then ascended beyond the confines of what a regular human is capable of. and he even devoured the entire Earth in one bite. I don't know what's scarier, the joke itself or what came of it. And with all of that being said, that's been the video. Thanks for watching. Did you enjoy and want to see me make more of these? Do you think you'd actually win? Let me know in the comments section down below, and check out the videos and those who made them. Thanks again to BD Studios for joining me for this video. He makes some great analog horror videos similar to mine, so be sure to check his channel out and let him know I sent ya. Like, subscribe, test out that hype button for me, and we can find out what that does together, and check out my other videos too while you're at it, since if you like this one, I'm sure you'll like the rest. And as always, we can't forget the shout out to my lovely patrons and YouTube members, and a big shout out to the highest tier Patreon members, Joel Matthew Colgrove, La Creatura, and Low Budget Detective 034. Thank you all for your continued contributions, and thank you to everyone else too. You guys are absolute legends. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Relevant links will be in the description if you want to further look into them, and I'll catch ya in the next one.